Okay, so I did intend for this to be a bit earlier, but I've been kind of busy with work, and I don't know what happened last weekend, and then yesterday went out for a meal anyway. So just enjoying the times really. So, um, I did put this up for a week, about 2 weeks ago. The Q&A comment on the video got a few replies, so it's not bad. There wasn't as many, so I can answer. Some people ask multiple questions, so I can just answer them. I've been a bit lazy on the presentation because I haven't put as many pictures as I did on the first Q&A, because I just didn't really know what pictures to put on. So most of them don't have any pictures, but some do, just to clarify something and show some of the information that I want to describe. So let's start with the first question. So Estepite Apafonico says, "Why did you decide to learn Korean?" I'm not sure if I'll just do them all in order. I'll just read them one by one and answer the questions. For this one specifically, I think there's another one with more questions that was a bit more. I'll just like read them all and answer them. So, why did you decide to learn Korean? Literally, so my girlfriend's Korean, obviously, and then I was literally just I kind of just want to learn the language because one, I kind of want to learn our language at some point in my life. There was always Italian in like to learn, like it's always been sitting there to learn. But because my girlfriend's Korean, I thought, oh, hold on, I might as well just learn that. Obviously, it's harder to learn, but I was just out of work, kind of just looking for something to do. It was kind of like I just wanted some, like I wanted to gain a skill or like have some meaning to my life, so that I wasn't just wasting days away, like applying for jobs. Like you can sit there and apply for jobs, but then outside of that, you still have to build skills. And then, so the skill that I chose was Korean. Obviously, it's kind of a regret in a sense that there are so many things you could do instead of like a language. Like language is so unimportant in the grand scheme of things, especially if you're a native English speaker. Obviously, if you're not, then English most of the time it becomes like the language you need to do everything just to like keep up. But even then, you can just there are so many things you can do in Spanish and French and everything, and in those countries, in any country that speaks those languages, you don't really lose out by not speaking English a lot of the time. But then sometimes you can, depend on the company and your position, you can get paid more. So I just decided to learn Korean as a self improvement sort of an extra skill, something to do, that kind of. So, how has your personal life profited from being fluent in Korean? Very little, to be honest. Partly because I feel like the worth would be more obvious if there were Koreans who lived nearby, or if I somehow managed to get a job in Korean maybe in the next few years, or if I was like living in Korea, or like I had family members to talk to in Korean or something like that. Like it's very hard to get like joy or profit from like the language if you have no real use for it in your day. Like it's like almost like an extra skill. Like that, I almost like it. I had never really even heard of Korean until maybe like 2012 or something. Like I've heard of it, but then I didn't really know much about it. Like living in the UK, it's not like obviously you in living in the UK, you know things like Urdu and um like Bengali and all this, yeah, like Arabic, maybe some European languages. If but when you live up north, especially because we didn't really have like Polish Romanian immigrants till about 2012 as well. Like it wasn't really, it's not common to hear those languages, other than like maybe you hear Chinese occasionally, but there's not many Chinese people here. Even like in my city, there's not that many Chinese people, but because there's quite a lot of takeaways, I suppose you could actually find someone who is like Chinese. Like what I'm saying is to find Korean people in the UK, you kind of have to go out of your way to actually physically like meet them, unless you just so happen to be like in school with a guy who's like Korean, which is probably like the rarest thing, like one of the rarest like countries that someone would be from if they were like an immigrant to this country. It's very rare. So very little is the answer to my question. So any experience where you thought all your effort was worthy just for that moment. Still, to be honest, the only benefits I really get right now is like someone's like, "Oh, can you just read this? What does this say?" or something like that. Like when I'm with my friends, or like when we're like reading webtoons or something, like they're reading the translation. The only advantage I get is that sometimes they aren't translated, and then there's a few times where I've had to go through a webtoon or something with my friends because it's not translated, and just like translate it for them. And that's mainly the most worth I've actually got from Korean. So um, I've never really had real life interactions other than like maybe going to the Korean mart and just like asking where something was, and they were like, "Oh, okay," and then that's about it. Like it just kind of ends there. They show you where the thing is, and then that's it. But other than that, nothing at the moment. But hopefully, I feel like most of the moments will come when I go to Korea in hopefully in December, if all goes well with quarantine and or whatnot. So hopefully I'm gonna try and spend as much time as I can in Korean and using Korean as well, not just like inputting. And then I'll use my girlfriend, and like she has two younger nieces, and then hopefully if I'll get confidence, I'll build up some confidence talking to the younger nieces, talking to like her family and stuff who like they don't speak English. Also, it's good practice because they can't really like fall back on English or anything. So I literally have to sink or swim, which I should be fine at this point to have basic conversations or like discuss basic things really. So when I go there, I'll see how I get on, and then obviously I can practice, ask things, and then everything around me will be in Korean TV, and everything, everyone, all the shops and everything will be in Korean. So I think it'll be a good opportunity, and I wish that I could go for longer. So that's about it for that. Your favorite authors? I don't really have any favorite authors right now, to be honest. What's his name? Baek Sujak. I think that's wrong. I can't remember his name. But I'm currently reading like Lee Young-do stuff, and then like Dragon Naja was good, but other than that, it's became kind of a bit fall flat. And then people are saying the other two, 너무 맛있는세 and 피는 맛있는세, or 피를 맛있는세. Yeah, they say they're good, but I haven't actually started those yet. But I don't really have a favorite author yet. But hopefully, when I catch up on some of the other webtoons as well, I'll have a better um understanding of who are the good authors and who are the bad authors. And then if you go to 소설넷, you can see the ones that are rated by like their works have the most ratings, and or you can search by like three different things. Like one's the most ratings, one's the most the highest amount of stars. So even if someone has like 1 5 star, they'll be like top of that. So it's kind of a bit weird. And then the last one is something about them like the most works, which is usually like there's some people on there who have like 120 works of like 120 different like web novels that they've written and published, and but most of them are probably like really bad. So you can check that out if you want to find some authors. And then there's the authors. They don't tend to like Korean authors don't tend to be like super popular. Like they don't have like multiple series like J.K. Rowling or something like that. Like well, okay, J.K. Rowling only has Harry Potter, but it's not at the point like it's not at the level where somebody has like a 7 book series, like that kind of thing. Like people just tend to have like 1 or 2 books that are like super popular, and then that's about it. So I think maybe in the next few years there might be some up and coming offers, but Korean offers tend to be not as like highly praised, or like maybe people just can't be bothered to read them. Like, I tend to find that web novel authors tend to be more popular than regular authors. So that's about that. So how different are Korean books in the original language and in translation? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by the question, but I haven't really read any translated books either way. I haven't read any English Korean books in English, or like English books in Korean. But I do remember seeing one book, Omoru Butake. Yeah, I think that's it. But somebody shared that, and then I think it was someone in Refold maybe, or the LTI Discord. But so basically they showed a picture of the translation, and it was really awkwardly like so the book is written, so in Korean it's very like kind of normal to have like really short sentences, but the book is written in this way, is like it's just like loads of like really short sentences, and that's just the way it's written. But then when it's in English, it's really awkward to read, and it's like it almost doesn't make sense sometimes because it's so like it's such a short sentence, like literally like 2 words, and it's kind of awkward to have so many stops in an English book in English. So that's the only thing I can comment on with that. Other than that, I don't really know. I was thinking of reading The Hobbit, but I just couldn't be bothered in the end. There's so much to actually read, like that is Korean that I can't read in English. That I would kind of just don't see the point of wasting time on something I've already read, especially or even something that isn't exclusively in Korean, like other than like TV shows which are dubbed, which is the reason to watch them is to get the Korean audio anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So, how did you find motivation when you didn't want to do anything Korean? Well, I'm not even sure. I think I find this with Italian actually, that I find it hard because I'm trying to do Korean. Like I imagine that you just kind of need to put it on like high on your priority list. So as something that's like continuously ongoing, it's very easy for me to do Korean when I'm not doing other things. So I can exercise, like even if exercise is like higher on the priority and work is higher on the priority than Korean, I can do those things and then still do Korean as well. But it's hard to do Korean and then do Italian as well. Like it's hard to fit them in without it feeling like it's detracting from one. Like I could just switch everything to Italian now and it would be the same. It's like you don't need like I don't even have any motivation. It's just I'm just doing it for something to do and something that I know is always there, which is ties back into the reason I started it in the first place was because it's just something to do. It's like why would you do something in English? I'm like I've literally mastered English like completely, or like you could almost say that like as a native speaker, and then obviously I might not talk like the best or like using the highest vocabulary or anything, but I still know the highest vocabulary. I probably could easily get myself up to a point where I could like train myself to speak like an obed, but nobody wants to do that. So I can basically understand every single thing I want to in English. So it just feels like using English or watching anything in English or doing anything in English is a waste of time unless that one specific thing is fun enough to just be out learning Korean or using Korean to watch something else that is only in Korean. It's like I'm using it to get into a different like area. Like I've almost exhausted everything I want to do in English, and it's like I'm using it to get a separate area. So for me personally, there is not really any motivation. It's just you just doing it because it's something to do. So how you would find the motivation is you would just have to like discipline yourself. Like I'm gonna do this today. Like it's probably better to just plan that you're gonna do X the day before. Like I'm gonna read like 30 pages of this book, and then I'm just gonna do that tomorrow. And then you do it, and then you start to get when you. I find that when you start to see results, that's when you start. It just doesn't become motivation anymore. It just becomes like you're just aiming. You're just working towards a goal. So that's about that for that. So how do you push your reading when you don't understand most of what you're reading? Um, if you're not understand, if you're at a point where you're not understanding, I would actually say what you should do is change your mindset to not care about understanding, like not care about not understanding, and just use the content to. It's almost like you're using the content because it has words that you don't know. So you just go through and you just look up every single word because the words either gonna keep continuously come up and you start gonna start understanding it, or it doesn't continuously come up and what do you lose? You don't lose anything. It takes like 5 seconds to search it up. So you don't, or maybe like, okay, maybe it takes like 30 seconds to search something up. So you don't lose as much, and you're going to continue. What you'll find is you'll continuously be searching up the same word a lot, and then at some point you'll get that one sentence and it'll click. So you've got the choice of you can just go for something really easy, or you can just choose to stick with something and just keep going, and then really you could read it again afterwards if you really wanted to. But personally, I don't like reading things over and over and over. But as far as I know, Ollie Richards does recommend that, especially when if you're at the start or you understand little. Like the first time you go through it, you've looked up the word, so you have like a base of the word, so you know the word exists. And then if you read it again, and then maybe this time you understand it, and when you understand something, that's when it starts clicking. That's when you start understanding something once, twice, three times, and then it's like after the third, fourth time, it's like locked in. Like you know that word, like 100%, you know the word, unless an alternate meaning comes up, but you know that meaning most likely. So, what were your goals and milestones in your career journey? Which ones have you not reached yet? So, I don't really have any goal other than to be like literally native. That my goal is to like not even so much in speaking, but I want to be able to literally understand everything like a native speaker. I want it to be on par with my English level, and I know that that is going to take like beyond 5 years. I know that, and I'm already prepared for that. So I don't really care. It's not about the goal is so. Sorry if the mic keeps going too loud, but the goal is so unachievable that it just there is no worry about ever reaching it. So it's kind of like you just keep going because there is no goal. The only milestone I track is like the years that are passing. So the only ones I haven't reached yet are like year four, year five. I have certain expectations of like what will occur as a like I expect year four, year five to have certain expectations, and whether those expectations will be met, I don't know. But for year three, which is coming up soon, maybe in September, the end of September, maybe like halfway through September, um, the ability just grows and grows and grows and grows, and there's always things to notice, and it does almost feel never ending. So there is no real like goal. I don't really have a goal. I don't have a milestone, and I think that when I get like say if I go to Korea and then I start speaking a lot, I feel like I'll just hit like a wall of where like there is like this is how I feel with English is like there is only so much you can say in a specific way, and then like you just know how to say it automatically, and then there is no worry about, oh, I need to express myself in a better way, or I need to express this better. It's just like all I'm trying to do with my language ability is say something in the most native way possible. And then in English, obviously, everything I say is basically native, and I know exactly when I've made a mistake, but I don't care. And then I kind of want that my Korean to be at the point where I make the same mistake as a native would, but I don't want to pretend to be a native. I just want to intuitively understand things like that, like a native would. Like I'm not gonna like kid myself as like, oh, I'm a native Korean or something stupid, like something like that, or like trying to be a specific person or something like that. I just want the Korean ability to be on. I want to understand first, and that my main goal is to understand, and that is not yet reached. Like it gets better and better and better, and everything becomes clearer and clearer every single time. Every single time I listen to something, it becomes clearer and clearer, but it's not. It's still not yet at a high level of understanding where I can understand everything. Even just like regular TV shows, I don't understand every single thing. Like maybe if it's like a basic TV show or some YouTube videos, I understand most things, like 99%. And then it's like there's always something that somebody says, like either you haven't heard it phrased like that, or you just your brain just is going slow on the day or something like that. But I want it to be where it's like everything's automatic, and not yet does it feel automatic for everything. So that's my goal. That's the goal I haven't reached yet. Um, reading understanding is much better than the listening understanding, but still, I don't know what's happened lately. Last like week or so, like I don't know what's happening, but like I must just be extremely tired because my brain is like I feel I'm understanding, but it just feels like I just can't remember like if I just read a sentence, I can't remember it at all, and it's been like this for a while. And I think like the more used to it you get, like the more used to just like reading only Korean or like reading mainly in Korean or whatever, like the language that you're trying to learn, um, you will become, it will just become like automatic. And like it, like when I read English, I already know like every single possibility of like what is going to be said or like what words will go where and everything. Like everything is automatic. When I read, it's so automatic. I just skim over words and I know exactly what the sentence says, and I already know the meaning exactly. And then that is it's still far off even for reading, but I would say that the listening itself, because it's listening like speaking and stuff and like audio tends to be less like it's less difficult than say like the average reading content is. But I just want to be able to like skim over sentences and be so used to seeing certain grammar structures and certain words in relation to other words that it's almost automatic. But I still think that's like maybe 2 3 years even more away, and it doesn't even relate to like speaking ability or anything. It's just like having the language be instant. So that's my goal. My goal and my milestones are for everything to be instant. My milestones are just to keep hitting the years, keep putting in the time, like making sure I'm putting like 2 3 4 hours in a day, as much time as I can spare into watching Korean TV shows, reading Korean books, everything. So thanks, man. Buona fortuna con il tuo italiano. Thank you very much. Grazie. Okay. Do you plan on living in Korea in the future? No, not yet. Not living as of yet. I would if the opportunity arose. I would gladly take the opportunity to live there for months, even a year, something like that. But currently, there's zero plans to actually live there. Um, if I was still off work and I wasn't back at work, I would have liked to have go there for like 3 months and just live there for 3 months, and then obviously just come back and then maybe do it again like later on. But currently, there's no plans. So that's about it for that one question. Thank you, Blue. So Damfine Gaming says, I have 3 questions that basically boil down to the idea of streamlining vocabulary building at an intermediate level and avoiding wasting time on words that are rarely ever said. Okay. Outside of the use of frequency lists, of course, given that there are so many words, and for someone looking to not waste time with words that are unlikely to be used much, how do you choose whether a word is worth learning? For example, in Korean, there are so many words and phrases that are usually used mostly in writing only, used in formal situations only, words used over other words, words that are poetic but rarely said in daily life, words that make literal sense but are kind of unnatural to use in real life speech, etc. So I'll just answer these 1 2 3. Okay, so one, it doesn't matter because there is the possibility, regardless of what situation you're in, there is the possibility that somebody's going to use a word that you don't know, or you can't just say like, oh, like the just because the words are more likely used in a specific situation. This does so you can say this word is more likely used in a book. That does not stop anyone from using that word because it's still part of the language. So that you just have to look at the language as one entity. You don't really have a choice of what you learn anyway. There is no level of words. The only marker of words is the frequency in which you hear them, which will allow you to have more chances to learn that word. So uh, I don't think there is any way of streamlining it to the point, because even if you learn all these like very specific areas of words, so what was it? Rarely said in daily life. So like daily life is just literally anything. Daily life literally is anything. Somebody in your daily life can walk up to you with the Bible and start quoting the Bible, start reading the Bible at you. That is considered daily life. Everything, literally everything that can happen, I would say is considered daily life, because anything can happen in a day. Like obviously there are certain things, but you can't like what does even daily life like count as, because anything can happen, and like something can fall out the sky that you've never seen before, and how are you supposed, you literally only have a choice of whether to describe it. And then like it's just down to the commonality of words. And like I would say, actually, instead of trying to learn words like that, I would say use the TV shows and whatever to learn phrases that you want to learn. And then like as you keep going, you'll start to understand which words are the words. So like you can't really streamline it unless you know from experience which words are the ones that are more likely used in these different situations. That like it's just not something to be worried about, because if you want to actually, you like at some point all these sections. So if you completely avoided news vocabulary, or we could consider the news. Okay, so if you completely avoided the news, you would find that when you come to read the news, you will understand a lot of words. Even if you just did like day to day life, yeah, which counts as what? Like going to work, which depends on where you work, is going to be a very specific set of vocabulary. Like at my work, there are certain words that nobody's going to say outside of the work. Like, or like they might say it, but what does daily life constitute as? Like going to the doctors, going to the dentist. Is that daily life? We don't know, but it is day to day life. Yeah. So it can. The idea is just to learn everything. If you just learn everything, you're still gonna come across words that you don't know. Like even in your native language, somebody will say something you don't know. Like it can be on the news, and some politician has said something. Somebody's talking about something. Even just like a talk show on the internet, the radio, whatever. Somebody's going to say something that you don't know at some point. So it's better to just learn everything. And there is no real streamlining because you can't choose whether you're going to learn a word or not. You can hear a word 100 times possibly and not understand it any time, and then you still haven't learned the word, even though it's a really common word. Like your brain just doesn't work like that. It just doesn't want to. It doesn't want to streamline. It wants to find the pattern, and it wants to get an understanding on its own terms, and we have no choice in that. So, number two. What do you recommend to be an efficient step in vocabulary building after a learner has completed the most common words found in lists/decks? Um, Choose something that you want to watch or read, and like kind of stick to that genre. And then the more you stick to the genre, the smaller the amount of vocabulary will be. So you want to be ideally reading or watching something as much as you can, obviously, and then you want to stick to a specific genre to get the high frequency words in that specific field. Which, as I said, if you watch a sitcom or something, you're gonna have a huge variety of like words, because even though the sitcoms are like daily life, there are so many words used in daily life. Like anything can happen. Going to the hospital is daily life. Like going to the shop is daily life. It's not even daily life because who goes shopping every single day? No one. So so you just want to read or watch and just get as much exposure as you can. It's the only efficient way to build vocabulary. You could sit down. There are the two apps, the Sejong Hakdang apps that you can use. The only thing you can like manually do is like study vocabulary lists or just something like that. Or like other than that, you just have to make sure you're searching all the words. So if you watch a TV show and you have subtitles, search every single word you don't know, and then that's the only efficient way is to have seen the word first. You have to expose yourself to as many words as possible. So it's like the first time you see a word, you notify your brain that word exists. And then when your brain knows the word exists, maybe it recognizes it the second time, the third time, the fourth time. Maybe it never recognizes it. It's like, oh, have I seen this word again? Have I seen this word before? And then sometimes you have a feeling you have seen a word. Sometimes you feel like I've never seen this word, even though you might have before. And then that's the only way to do it, is just to continually just expose yourself to them. And then obviously you can manually do that by I suppose reading would be considered manually exposing yourself, like putting effort to expose yourself, as opposed to just having audio on repeat or something. I'm gonna cough. Sorry. So, um, that's about all I can really say for that one, to be honest. So, number three, do you have any tips for dealing with ambiguity for people who feel a strong need to search up and add every unknown word to Anki? Do you generally go with the flow and pick new words every now and then, or do you write every single words you don't know that you come across? So I would say, and then I think some people might have a different opinion on this, but I would say just search up every single. If you don't search up every single word, then it's pointless even coming across that way. It's pointless doing the mass hours of exposure if you're not searching up like all the words you're seeing, because the chances are that even just looking up a word one time, you could remember that for weeks, even without adding it to Anki. So on adding everything to Anki, you will quickly surpass, like, you will never be able to catch up to the words that you see if you just add everything to Anki. There is only so much you can add to Anki, or maybe if you're doing like 100 cards a day or something stupid like you will never actually catch up to the amount of words. But what you will catch up is your knowledge will catch up to the words that you've added. So you even if you add like every single word, you will be like 1,000 words behind, and then in a year's time, you'll probably know half of them without ever actually repping the thing, just because you've seen them so much in reading and watching and whatever like that. So that's about it, really. To be honest, if you, I don't write every single word. I don't know that I'll come across, but I do search up every single word. I search up every single word because just seeing you just need to see the meaning of it sometimes. Even if you think you know it, sometimes it's worth searching up just to double check, and then that way it solidifies the meaning even more. And I would say also, if you can, try to read the Korean description. So one, to it'll like solidify other words that you already know, and then also it kind of solidifies the meaning of the word itself, like gives you a better understanding of the word than it would just be to see a translation of it, because you just kind of have a vague understanding of what's going on, especially some words just can't translate. So that's about it. Thank you, Dumfan Gaming. So Freya Naoshin, hopefully that's a Naoshin or Naoshin. Yep. Can you please share your first 1 to 3 months routine? I printed your Path to Fluency spreadsheet, so if you can share that times routine, it would be helpful for me also how to start learning Hanja when. Okay, so you don't really need to learn Hanja like ever. I think someone did actually reply to this comment, but you don't need to learn Hanja ever, because the chances are you won't really come across it. But um, I would say maybe like 3 months in or something, you could just look at how to study Korean's Hanja guide. I think there's like 200 Hanja on there, and it's worth just going through them just to see like how words connect. But when you search up words in the dictionary, just look at the Hanja next to them. Even if you don't understand it, at some point, as you keep going, you will start to notice that they're very similar. The Hanja are very similar. Sorry. So you will start to notice the similar Hanja that are in the words, and then you'll start to notice. Hopefully, you'll start to um, the syllables will start to have that meaning as you keep going, and you can guess better. And then, if you study too much Hanja, because you can't see them, it can actually throw you off because you know too many possibilities, and then you start overthinking what the word could possibly mean, and then you can't guess the word because you know too much. So, the first 1 to 3 months, what I would do is, so you learn Hangul like instantly, do the 500 words deck, and then while you're doing the 500 words deck, I think someone else actually asked this question, but it's not this one. So the 500 words deck, you do that, and you can do the Korean beginner deck at the same time, which is really simple from Korean grammar in use. I would suggest going through Korean grammar in use, um, and the talk to me in Korean. Like, just go through all of them really. Like talk to me in Korean 1 to 10, Korean grammar in use. Like, and then because you've seen it before, the deck will make more sense in that you will have like you will have seen the words before, so you've seen maybe the translation before, and you've seen the grammar before. So I would suggest doing that before you even start the grammar beginner deck actually. And then when you've while you're doing that and you've finished reading the thing, you could probably start the Yonsei reading one, or you can just go through all the grammar. And then, but the thing is, it still takes time to get the words into your head to start understanding the grammar. And then Yonsei reading one is very, very simple. You could also get Ollie Richards' book. I can leave a link in the description for that one. So that book is really simple actually, but it still has enough words that you could read it, because there isn't much grammar, so you could read it from the start really. It's like you can do that in Italian maybe, but maybe you might struggle with the Korean because you're still not completely familiar with like Hangul. But you can, like, what I'm trying to say is there is no real set way of doing it. So in between doing all this, so this is what I would use as like your active study. So your active study is like you do Anki in the morning, and then when you have active time, you just go through all the grammar, and then when you don't have active time, you just watch something that you enjoy. So if there is a TV show you want to watch, just watch it with English subtitles, just to get like Korean audio coming into your ears. or you can watch it with no subtitles, or if it doesn't even have subtitles, just as long as it's something that you want to watch, like, because it gives you a reason and it gives you a content bank that you can go back and watch with no subtitles later on, and you already know what's going to happen. So it just gives you like familiar content that you can immerse in later on, um, to help solidify like everything you've learned up until that point, basically. Or like you can use it as a test, like every 6 months you just watch that TV show or something like that. Or like many TV shows, like it just needs to be something that you enjoy. The whole point of learning the language is to do something that you enjoy in that language. Like this is why people quit, because they have no reason to continue like learning the language. For me, there's certain thing, like I can play video games in Korean, so it keeps me, like I can just keep doing Korean just in the video games if I wanted to. Like it's always something to do. Like, and there's webtoons to read that always in Korean, um, stuff like that. Like you need a reason to actually like want to do it, like want to learn Korean. Like if there are certain people like um there's a guy on YouTube called Not Saying. He likes the K-pop content and he loves the K-pop content. So it just makes sense for him to focus on K-pop content and use K-pop content as much as he can for his listening practice and reading practice and everything. Because why not? The whole point of doing it is to, like, if you're just learning Korean to learn a language, you're probably gonna really struggle, like really struggle, especially because it's gonna take you 2 years, 3 years, 5 years to actually like be good and like enjoy it to the point where you're actually enjoying it and not just still learning. So that's about as much as I can say for that, I think. So yeah, just do all the grammar and stuff in your active time. Maybe start reading some in your active time. Um, do the decks in the morning. And then that's about it. That's all you can really do is just keep doing, putting in time, putting the time reading, putting the time watching, putting the time going through the grammar, and making sure that you understand what is going on. And then as you start understanding more, you can just completely break free from all of that, and then you're just reading and watching whatever you want because you can. And then there's always going to be new words, so you're still learning as you're doing both of those. So that's about it. How's TBMM? I know it sounds stupid, but is there a certain order in which I should do your diction since I'm new to Korean? Should I do the 500 beginner vocab by itself or with the sentence deck? And if I should do both, I should still do 20 to 25 on the vocab and 10 to 15 on the sentence cards. I would say yes. And as I said in the previous question with reading Korean grammar in use, I would also read the 2000 essential Korean words because it's just gonna like prime your brain to be learning the vocabulary. Like you want to do the 500 words and the grammar one first, and then I wouldn't even start this one. I wouldn't start the vocabulary one until you finish both of those anyway, because the 500 words is going to give you some vocabulary, and then the beginner one is going to give you the basic grammar, and then the vocabulary one has some grammar that's not even in there, so it's almost like just a step up. So in the Anki video, they are in order, and then here is the order on the screen. So hopefully you just do them. But I would do these two simultaneously. Yes, the 500 words and the beginner grammar sentences. The numbers, the 20 to 25 and the 10 to 15. You can do the numbers how you want, but I would say focus on the 500 words first. So if you feel like it's too much overall, you could just do 5 on the grammar sentences. Like I would try and finish the 500 words first because those 500 words are gonna get you through everything else very easily. Like it's gonna make everything easier. 500 words, but even though it's not a lot, and you're gonna need like 5,000 words. I think there's overall something like 6,000 words in this, like in all these decks. So that's the order, and then once you've done those two, I would just do them progressively. Like do the vocabulary sentences. You could probably do the grammar sentences actually while you're doing the beginner vocab because it takes so long to do the beginner vocab ones. So that's about it. Thank you. Kobe Bean, in the beginning, where almost every sentence is full of new words, do you think it's worth making cards for every new word or only when something really stands out or keeps coming up? Thanks for your videos, they're very helpful. Um, to be honest, I wouldn't even worry too much about Anki. All I would worry about is that you are looking up the words to get the meaning. So all you want to do is get the meaning and at least see the meaning one time at a minimum. And even just keep searching up the word, keep searching up the word until you understand it, until you completely understand it. And I think that would be, personally, that's more beneficial than spending the time making cards, because sometimes you only get that one. When you make a card, an Anki card, or just any kind of flashcard, you only get that one specific usage, or that, and not even usage, like that one specific sentence. I think that if you wanted to learn that specific sentence and you wanted to be able to use that specific sentence, I would really focus on make a card for it and everything, just so you can continuously see the sentence, just to it'll make it easier in your mind to conjure up the sentence. If you've seen these same exact sentence like 100 times, it will be a lot easier to just say that sentence. So personally, I wouldn't really I wouldn't worry about adding so many words. Personally, if I went back, I would focus on just making the picture cards and not really adding sentences, because for me sentences are so long to rep, and I don't think sentences are worth doing to learn words. The sentences are worth doing to learn that sentence so that you could instantly produce the sentence, not so much to using the sentence to remember the word, because you're going to continuously see words over and over and over and over again if you're putting in the time listening and reading. So that's about it. Thank you, Kobe Bean. So Monster Chin says, thank you for taking the time to answer questions. If you don't mind, I know this must sound stupid, could you perhaps explain why immersion is so vital to language learning? Is it a question of how fast you want to advance or how fluent you are aiming to be? Because in theory, an extensive knowledge of grammar and vocabulary, say for instance around 2,000 words, should be sufficient in order to read in a foreign language, shouldn't it? If that's all you want to achieve, at least that's the impression I'm currently stuck with while learning Japanese. Although I understand I'm probably terribly in the wrong, I would appreciate your input as you have amassed more experience. So the main thing I would say immersion is for is really is really understanding, like having a natural understanding of the language rather than a mechanical understanding. Like even if you knew all the words and you knew maybe the meaning is a bit too much. So if you knew 20,000 words and you knew their meaning, the problem is that you would only know the meaning. Even if you knew the meaning in Japanese, you wouldn't know the exact usage and like which words are used. This is the problem of just having knowledge as opposed to just having like instant, like you already know what people are like. You know what's going to come after a certain word, because there is only like one there is only one thing. Like recently, what do we have? COVID. What comes after COVID-19? Like that's almost guaranteed. Your brain is like almost primed to hear 19 after COVID because you've heard it so many times. So you just wouldn't, and even beyond the understanding. So if you knew 20,000 words and you had extensive knowledge of grammar and vocabulary, do you know all the idioms? Do you know the what's it called? Oh man, I'm blanking. The culture, like the culture. Do you know cultural aspects of the language? So even if you know, like, okay, say you're studying Japanese, even if you know what a kimono is and you know how to describe a kimono, do you actually know what that, like, do you actually know what it looks like? The reason people are wearing kimonos, the reason like kimono is like winter wear, and then like yukata is like the summer wear or whatever, or maybe the other way around, I can't remember. But like, do you know the cultural knowledge behind that? Like, and as mechanical as it gets, even like regardless of even if you have the description of like, okay, you have two descriptions and they're almost the same. It's just like Japanese clothing worn in summer, Japanese clothing worn in winter. Yeah, it doesn't give you a visual representation of like, okay, as Westerners, kimono is like it's quite well known. But say there are like certain foods or certain things, like you don't instantly have an understanding of what it is, like instantly. And this is what immersion will give you, because you will have heard certain phrases, you will have heard certain things, you will have seen people pointing to things, doing things with certain things that will allow you to have the visual aid and like all the knowledge that comes with it, like hearing the audio, like even if you just knew the words, does that mean do you know the audio? Do you know how words join together when they're connected to other words? Do you know how people express things in certain situations? Like there is so much missing from just having the knowledge of grammar and vocabulary. It's just not, it's not enough to know that. And then when it comes to speaking, you will never have or like even writing, you will never have the ability to just instantly jot down thoughts, because you will always be in some like weird translating mode, or some weird like mechanical mode where you are thinking of all the words, you're thinking of all the grammar, and then it doesn't like it's not natural. Like it's very unnatural. And like you can see this whenever there is like a foreign speaker of English, and you can hear their original language coming through every single time, like almost every single time. Even people who are very, very good, they will make mistakes, like very small mistakes that may even give them away. Whether it's like a pronunciation mistake on a random word, like they just don't say very often, so they still have like the old understanding of the word from before they were like fluent enough to sound almost native. So using input is like, so your parents, when you're growing up, let's say when you're growing up, you have the input of everyone around you, and that is how you become culturally like intertwined with the language and the place where you grew up. Like if you move, if you have someone who moves around a lot, they probably won't have the same like it's called, okay, I'm losing words today. So you won't have the same like the same, it's not drive, what is it? So you won't have the same like nationalism, like this kind of like nationalism, or like whatever, countyism, or like cityism, any kind of like pride of your like where you've grown up or anything. If you continuously move around, and like even if your accent is like different, it's like you're not in the group, you're not in the group, so you lose that. Like that's what you gain from the gaining input as a child. You get all the cultural references. If I go to Australia, I can pick up some of the cultural references, but I'll never have, like, you can learn the words and the things, but you can only live it to a point. You can't learn everything. It's like you can tell people what things are, but they need to physically be there to actually like learn how to do it. It's basically the same in everything, except language does feel a bit different in the sense that you have like you are going to output language at some point in your life, and it kind of needs to be automatic for it to sound good, natural. So that's the aim of language learning. So talking about speed as well, like you mentioned speed, is a question of how fast you want to advance. I would actually say immersion is the opposite of what you want to be doing if you wanted to advance quick. If you wanted to advance quick, extensive knowledge and all the theory that comes with learning language is probably the best. That it just beats it. It's so much easier to study very specific things in order to speak, in order to write. It's very easy to quickly learn how to do those things. Whereas with immersion, and you can do study like with immersion, but if you just focus solely on building your this very specific like grammar set, or this very specific like vocabulary set, you could do that. But what you'll find is that over time you will always be stuck, because you haven't had that continuous input of like listening and reading like over and over and over and over again. You will always just be stuck, because you are limited to the level of yourself, rather than the level of content that you could find to study with, as opposed to the level of content that every single native knows. Like just every single native can understand the level of content, like, because you should be aiming to be immersing and in the type of content, like in that kind of content where it's just like everyone can understand this. You immerse to understand everything that could possibly come up, or everything that could possibly happen, and then you can easily find new words. So you say, oh, okay, I don't understand news. Okay, I'm going to watch news for 5 hours a day, every single day, until I understand all the words. I'm going to search up all the words that I don't know, and that is what I'm going to do until I understand everything and I get really familiar with the news. It's all about becoming familiar with the language. That's what immersion is, and it's not quick. It's very actually it's very slow, but the overall game, like as you're saying, how fluent you're aiming to be. Now this is the difference. Is like immersion will make you, it'll make you a more fluent person. It will make your language more accurate to the native, or like even to the, you could even, if you immersed, or say you're, it's like when people have foreign parents and they're, even if their parents speak them in the language of the country, they will still not have a native understanding in the sense that, like, of those specific areas. So if you're in the UK, you and your parents are American, you may still have like a very strong American accent on like a very strong like American way of thinking of everything, even though you live in the UK, because you are like immersed in your parents' like language, in your parents' bubble, and then that is all you understand to a point. Like, and then you will still have that much of that one in your head. Like what is coming into your head is the American version of the English language, and then you'll probably go to school and spell things differently, or and say things differently because you have the accent of the people that you have immersed in. So this is why when you are immersing, you can choose a specific area that you want to like become more like to sound more like, to listen to the way that they are speaking, and blah 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 blah. So you will have like a better understanding of the language. You'll be more fluent in like that, the specific thing that you have listened to. Like if you even in your own native language, if you sat there listening to like political podcasts all day, you would probably be pretty good at talking about political stuff because you've heard so many different phrases and words and all this. And then the more you pay attention to it, the easier it is to use, which is what you're doing in immersion. So hopefully that's explained enough. Maybe I was kind of rambling a bit, but I think the difference is it's just to stop you from becoming mechanical. It's to stop you from being stuck at like a specific level. Even if you knew 20,000 words, it might be enough, but you would still come across. Do you have the feeling of like the word? Do you just mechanically know the words, or do you know how they fit together to the point where it's like, oh, this could possibly mean this? Whereas I think if you are like an immersion learner, you will see like, okay, these two, I've heard these, like these two word, these two. If it's like a two character word, you're like, oh, these two characters might mean this, and it kind of makes sense in the sentence. But like, if you're just like mechanically, this word means this word means this, you might not have that feeling. It's all about gaining the feeling of the language, the feeling, and making it intuitive as opposed to mechanical. So I think that it really, really shows. It would probably show most on outputting than it would just understanding. Like you could probably, to a point, understand everything just by mechanically learning every single word in the dictionary or something like that. You would probably have a decent understanding, but your output would always be limited to maybe what you've specifically like practiced, or like translating from one language to another or something like that. So that's about it for that one. And that's all the questions actually. So thank you for watching. It's quite long at 53 minutes so far. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you watched on double speed or something like that. Um, I will try to upload some more videos. I'm sorry this one was kind of late because I was just kind of busy and whatever, and then I've been trying to, mainly I've just been trying to immerse, like get some time in immersing after work and stuff, because I do get to read on the bus to work and the bus home, but then when I get home I have to like, maybe sometimes I have to cook, maybe sometimes I have to like do other stuff, maybe sometimes I even stay a bit later at work and get home at 8, 9 o'clock, and then I've got to be in bed for 10, half 10, and then that's about it really. It just becomes awkward to do things like write articles or make YouTube videos when you have so little time to like do immersion, and you want to spend your time immersing in the language. So it does become hard, and then I'll try and get some videos out about something sooner or other. I think it's probably easier to write articles, but it takes me multiple days to write articles when I only have like an hour to write them at night. And then videos, sometimes you can, if I plan the videos, I can probably get a video out like once a week maybe, but I haven't really been doing any planning because I'm trying to help my mate do some art thing. But that's about it. So thank you for watching. Keep immersing. Don't give up. Never give up. It's very easy to stop like learning the language, especially like Japanese, Korean, something like that, Vietnamese, long languages to learn. Just keep going. Just keep, it's not so serious. Just it's just a hobby, or it's just a skill to develop. It's not so serious. Like just look after yourself before you put priority on the language, because you can't learn when you're dead. So that's about it. Thank you for watching. Hopefully everyone stays safe. Good night.